how do you start a flower farm? That's a question we get asked all the time. My answer used to be this book, but now my answer is these books. Today I'm going to talk to you about Lennie Larkin's book, Flower Farming for Profit. But first, a backstory. 9 years ago, I started my very first business. It was called Cutie Curations, and I sold cloth diapers and other little baby supplies. I sold around town through word of mouth and Facebook Marketplace, but I also did a summer market, and I learned a ton of lessons. Most of them weren't actually very great for my business. The first one is that the amount you can sell per hour is really important if you want to be able to make enough at a market to sustain the market. With the baby things, there's so few customers, my prices were so low, the numbers were just never going to work out. And then by talking to other fellow market vendors, I also learned a lot of people's businesses were similar to mine. They were businesses that weren't making any money and they weren't ever really going to. There's a lot of businesses that just weren't working. Cutie Curations was started because I had a passion. And the biggest lesson that I took from that is passion isn't enough. You need to have an actual business plan. And 2 years in, when the passion kind of started to disappear, I realized, I didn't have anything and I needed to start over. Right as I was realizing that business was never going to work, we bought our farm and we started thinking, what is a farm business that we could run on our property? Because of what I'd learned, I knew business first. It wasn't what I wanted to sell that mattered. It was what I could sell that would make a sustainable business that mattered. And so I came to the farm with the plan of needing to find a way to sell $100,000 a year in some sort of farm product. And then from there, I looked at my market and the ideas grew. We started with veggies and flowers, and eventually we've moved into just flowers. But the goal has always been that we need to hit these certain numbers and we need to be able to sell enough to do that, or the farm is never going to work out. We're going to be back to where we started with the baby stuff business, and we're going to have a business that isn't set up for long-term sustainability. Before we started the farm, I never actually grew flowers at all. I only really grew veggie flowers in my home garden. So I came to the farm with plans of growing flowers with not very much knowledge. And so Lynn Basinski's The Flower Farmer, this book was such an incredible resource for me. This book taught me all the basics that I needed to know about flower farming, and it taught me, what it was going to take. It taught me the knowledge that I needed to go and make a farm plan that would be well suited to the flowers that I wanted to grow on my own property. She gave me the basis to know how to farm plan here, how to crop plan, how to, move through the year with intention. And, this is essential knowledge that I think everyone should kind of have as the basis when they start to look into the idea of flower farming. Having my farm planning knowledge was great, and knowing that I needed a business plan was great. But, as we went into those early years of farming, I didn't have that niche, industry specific information about building a flower farm business that, I needed to be just that one step ahead. The way that I learned a lot of the lessons that I'm here at, going into year 6 on our farm is through trial and error. And trial and error is great, but it's a lot cheaper and a lot quicker to learn from someone else's mistakes. And that is what makes Lennie Larkin's book so amazing. It can be hard to find good quality information on the internet. A lot of popular information isn't necessarily universal information. And sometimes what seems easy and too good to be true really is too good to be true. It's really hard to find trusted sources. But Lennie is the source you can trust. I first discovered her 2 years ago on Instagram when she was sharing a tulip cost of production breakdown. She was giving all the details about how much it actually cost. Real numbers, real farmer. And you know, I've loved the way she thinks about numbers and the information that she shares ever since then. Lennie Larkin started her farm 10 years ago in California. B-Side Farm had a thriving roadside stand business that did $130,000 a year in addition to retail sales, weddings, wholesale. She was doing it all. When people talk about a six-figure farm as being the ideal, she knows how to do that, and she knows how to do that solidly. The farm is currently 2 acres outside Portland, and it's gorgeous. I have links to her Instagram below so you can go check it out. And you would think all of that is more than enough, but she's also served multiple terms on the board of the ASCFG, conducted grant-funded research, taught, provided business coaching, and written this amazing book. I don't know where she finds the time, but I do know she's a big deal. Okay, let's get to the book though. I'm not gonna paraphrase the entire book to you because it's way too dense. There was so many like incredible details on every single page. I couldn't sum it up for you. You just have to read it. Basically, flower farming for profit is broken down into 3 sections. The first one is kind of a general overview of what flower farming is. The middle section is kind of like business planning. And then the third section is kind of farm operations, which is basically just loaded up with all those like tips and tricks and all the trial and error and so many amazing tidbits. The first section felt like it should have been stuff that I already knew. You know, it was loaded up with, you know, all the different ways that you could be a flower farm. It taught, you know, it did a breakdown on weddings, like so many details that I feel like I should have been exposed to at this point, you know, 5 years under my belt of growing flowers. But even so, it was, you know, a great refresher for me. Here on the farm, going into year 6, we're talking about doing some wholesale for the first time. And the section on, you know, selling to wholesale had like just so many little things that I'd never thought of that is like really gonna keep me on track for when I go to try to do it for the first time in the spring. You know, I also really liked the way she broke down the different models of flower farming that you could be. A lot of times people kind of present information like what they're doing is, you know, the best way to be a flower farm. And there's so many different ways, so many different businesses. So I really liked the practical approach that she took to every single business model. She brought up a lot of the problems that I see not often talked about. You know, I'm obsessed with her roadside stand, obviously, because I'm doing that on my farm. But you know, she talked about some really practical things, you know, with the farmers market, with roadside stands, with CSAs, that, you know, I just had never heard phrased that way, that I was like, yes, yes, yes. The business planning stuff was also super helpful for me. You know, even though I should at this point have a business plan, you know, she had whole sections about bookkeeping and crop profitability and, you know, tracking that I should be doing that I'm really not doing the way I should. And you know, I really personally struggle with knowing, you know, the path of least resistance in those type of aspects of the business. And Lennie really laid out, you know, clear steps for me to take. It's definitely information I wish I would have had 5 years ago. And then finally, I loved all the talk about efficiency on the farm. You know, anytime you can get just one tip, it can save you so much money. There was one section where she talked about, you know, if you could just save 2 seconds per stem that you cut just by thinking a little bit more intentionally about how you do something over the course of a year, that adds up to thousands of dollars in your business. And you know, there's definitely multiple $1,000 tips that, you know, I felt I could have taken away from that book. And then there's also a section on marketing, you know, something I also need to do better with in my business. You know, I was really amazed at how much I am like taking away from this book. You know, I know I personally have a lot to learn, and like having read it, I'm really excited and really inspired for the new year. There's a quote in the book description that I think really sums up the value of this book. To successfully do what they love while expanding the market for sustainably produced flowers, new and experienced farmers alike must deliberately step back from the field and into the office. This is really the struggle of flower farming, right? Because the field is so great. And if new farmers can come from a place of learning and knowing before that siren song of the flowers sucks them in, you know, they're gonna have such a stronger foundation for growing their business. You know, and that's like why, like, you guys need to get this book. So in conclusion, this is the book I've been looking for years. Lennie puts into clarity for me the things that I know I need to be aware of, but I lose track of. Every page was loaded with knowledge, and the book gave me a clear path on how to bring better organization to my business, even though I'm going into 6 years. This is, from now on, going to be a every winter read for me. It's the type of book that I know I'm gonna get something new from every year, and every year it's gonna start me off on a really strong foundation. So I'm super excited to be adding this to my farm library. Okay, so disclaimer. Lennie gave me an early access copy to her book so that I was able to do this review, but she didn't pay me anything to make this video. I'm just like really excited about this book, and I want you guys to hear about it. She's also shared with me some links and resources that I have below in the description of the video that, you know, she feels would be helpful for you guys, including an exclusive $200 off coupon for her upcoming farm business course. So check those out. And I also have links to the books.